So hi guys, this is Keshav Malpani. Welcome back to 12 Minutes to CLAT, and we have a very special guest today, Himanshu Rajpurohit. And Himanshu को हमने खास के लिए बुलाया because Himanshu has like कह सकते हो कि outscored everybody in last year's CLAT PG exam. So he got an all-India rank 10 in CLAT PG 2024, and he is going to be very useful for all the CLAT PG aspirants जो इस साल के लिए prepare कर रहे हैं who are quite confused as to how to prepare the remaining time. So Himanshu will be sharing all his tips and all his experience as to how did he prepare for the exam, what were certain relevant sources जहां से उसने basis the past year papers ये देखा कि questions आते हैं, what kind of questions. So he has cracked a lot of, you could say, the ways in which you can study as well, not just the exam. So thank you so much Himanshu for sparing some time and being a part of this particular interview, and I'm pretty sure students के लिए बहुत ज़्यादा helpful होने वाला है. So I'll be asking you a lot of questions and try to answer them. You could say कह सकते हो कि honestly, and as you have studied and you've experienced this particular exam over a period of time, right? So starting में I think the simplest question that I would try to ask is कि the pattern that had changed in 2020 is continuing even now. Number of questions maybe थोड़े से कम हो गए. So if you look at the past year papers, it is slightly on a difficult side. मतलब ऐसा लगता है कि जो भी कॉलेज में पढ़ा था वो सभी मतलब इस एग्जाम में आता है. So how to cover that in such limited time then?
So Keshav, basically जो recent pattern है वो ये है कि they are asking 5 questions from 24 paragraphs.
Correct.
So these 24 paragraphs usually they try to structure around entire syllabus. Usually it's like it has never been an incident where they have missed out any subject. They try to cover each subject as possible to the minute extent of Hindu law and Muslim law also. So as the course has changed, the main focus still remains on the conceptual understanding and the landmark recent judgments and the previous year judgments. So if you are clear about these 3 things, I think like it's not a very difficult job, but yet it requires some amount of preparation for preparing these three things. And there are some questions which are pretty straightforward. For example, like in each paragraph, there will be 5 questions. At least there is 1 question per paragraph, which you can simply from the reading the paragraph carefully, you can answer it. So the 24 questions are a literally bonus to you. And there are some instances where there are even more than 1 question from directly from the passage. So in that way, it kind of balances out the whole thing. एक बार थोड़ा सा ऐसा like once directly when you see the paper, it's kind of anxiety kicks in a lot because like there are these judgments which you have not read from like anywhere. There's a random 2011 Delhi High Court judgment, then there's a 23 Supreme Court judgment. So it's all mixed up. So but once you get a hold of thing, it's kind of gets easier.
Makes sense. I think this is true. So I'm sure when you were preparing, you also had very limited time to prepare as these students have. So what were certain sources that you referred to as you're talking about certain laws that we have to study or certain judgments? So this question is two-pronged. I just want to understand sources for these judgments and what laws are to be studied. I mean, what acts particularly?
Yeah. So let me first start with the judgment part. So judgment part is the most important part for CLAT PG. So if I were to take my strategy, what I did was I made a list of at least 20 landmark judgments of each year, like of 3 years, 2024, 2023 and 2022.
Okay.
Of those 2020 judgment, 2025 judgments, each sources, I prepared a summary of sorts so that kind of let's just like curls down the issue, the main issue, what was the held, what was the entire proposition was about, if there was any dissent and if there was any judgment that was overruled. So first is preparing this list of landmark judgments. So there are a lot of these publishers such as Live Law, Bar and Bench, and there's now we also have Supreme Court Observer itself, which publishes the list of big judgments or the landmark judgments which are of more importance. So if you can just go through these lists and figure out what are the common judgments or the judgments which have been in the most matters of discussion. For example, the judgment of the Supreme Court that laid down that the distinction of power between the LG and the CM of the Delhi was very much in discussion. So there was a question directly from that. Then the judgment that came on the Maharashtra assembly case. So these issues which impact a lot of and create a lot of discussion are likely to be more asked than the others. So first is you need to prepare a summary of these landmark judgments, at least 15 to 20 judgments of 3 years, so that you don't miss out on any important part. Second, coming to the subjects part. So subjects part, so the consortium just lays down a wide subject part and does not list out a specific act as such. So for example, they just lay down family law. They have not laid down which act, which and what like there's no precise formulation in such. So in this sense, it's better to go by guides to for a conceptual understanding, because it is not possible to understand and mug up each act which is covered under this subject.
True.
So it's better that you gain a conceptual understanding of these subjects and then you go on with the landmark judgments on these topics. For example, let's say if we talk about the contracts, it's not possible to mug up entire 238 sections of the contract acts, and it takes a lot to do that, and it's not advisable also. So instead of that, what you can do is you can take out some topics such as frustration of contract. Maybe you take a case out of any landmark judgment. There's the Mangiram Mangad case on frustration of contracts. So you just skim through that, read through that. You deal with the section 56, which is the section which is dealing with the frustration act. So in this way, you can take out the important topics of each subject, and then you can study it. For my preparation, I also referred AK Jain, this is Ashok Kumar Jain, which is usually referred by a lot of aspirants in this for a conceptual understanding. And after that conceptual understanding, I also referred to a book which is released by Samarth Agarwal, which basically covers landmark judgments on each and every subject that's there on the. And if I were to kind of give you a more focused subjects, first is being the constitution. These are the subjects which will definitely get you marks, because these are easy to cover and score, and it's very comprehensible. ऐसा नहीं कि for example let's say if you want to study a family law, you will have to apply a lot of mind, but that's not required in subjects such as constitutional law. Tort is also simple. Tort is very small and simple. Then in terms of you can go for jurisprudence, not the detailed study of jurisprudence, basic principles, basic schools. International law is very simple. AK Jain has 3 volumes which widely covers these things. You need not mug up everything, but you should have a broad understanding of these things.
That makes sense. So the course that we have of CLAT PG, we also we understand the importance of landmark judgments here. So we have those landmark judgments compendiums for students, जो मतलब पूरा cover करेंगे कि what are the important. क्योंकि इसमें ना what we have seen in the recent past is कि अगर आपको कोई judgment आता भी है और आपको पता है कि मुझे आता है, तो उसमें पूछेंगे कि इसमें जज कौन था. अब वो एक चीज है जो आपको शायद क्लिक नहीं हुई थी जजमेंट पढ़ते वक्त कि यार जज कौन था या फिर इसमें डिसेंडिंग ओपिनियन किसका था. सो वी ट्राई टू गिव दैट आल्सो कि यार थिंग्स शुड गेट क्लियरर. और ये ऑल्दो बिल्कुल इररिलेवेंट बात है, बट ये विल बी क्लियर होनी चाहिए बिकॉज क्वेश्चन कैन बी आस्क्ड ऑन दिस. सो यहाँ पर अगर हम बात करें जैसे रीडिंग कॉम्प्रिहेंशन की, एज यू सेड कि जब हम क्वेश्चन को पैसेज को ठीक से पढ़ लेंगे तो उसी से हम 24-25 नंबर तो निकाल ही लेंगे if we reading it properly. So I think that is also one of the very important aspects of the exam, right?
Reading comprehension is very important. For improving reading comprehension, you can go for newspaper or you can go for mocks or past year papers. So generally देखने ही है. So it's better to at least practice it. It's sometimes people also find it difficult to read 24 paragraphs in a time span of 2 hours. And paragraphs are not small. Generally, they are, I think, 1.5 page A4 page. Mm-hmm. So you have to read it, analyze it really quick. True. For that, it's better to give at least 5-6 mocks or practice at least 5-6 paper before you go for the main exam.
It's important. So ताकि वो एक idea आ जाए, speed पता चल जाए, हमारी कितनी हुई पता चल जाए. Exactly. तो यहाँ पर we've discussed the laws and focus, we've discussed the judgments and all. Any particular सब्जेक्ट कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन आपने बताया विच वी अंडरस्टूड, और क्योंकि इसमें 12-14 अलग अलग लॉज हैं, मतलब इट्स बेसिकली एवरीथिंग वी स्टडीड इन लॉ स्कूल. सो ऐसे कुछ 4-5 लॉज इस पर मेन फोकस करना चाहिए. ऑब्वियसली क्वेश्चंस विल बी आस्क्ड फ्रॉम एवरीवेयर, बट कुछ क्वेश्चंस ऐसे होते हैं जहां पर आप इजीली मैनेज कर सकते हो कि स्टडीड सो एंड सो लॉज. तो एनी 4-5 लॉज दैट यू वुड लाइक टू टेल स्टूडेंट्स की इस पर मेजर फोकस करो, इससे पहले खत्म कर लो.
The first and most important is constitution. In the constitution, you do not focus on every part. You have to stick yourself to what is important and what's in discussion. For example, the first 4-5 parts of the constitution till at least, let's say, when we start the union, just before the union, the director principle of state policy, fundamental rights, state, the definition of state, citizenship, at least these 4-5 parts. Then when we come to the constitution amendment, or you have to figure out what are the important particles. Important part. A question will not be asked, let's say, randomly from finance commission if it's not in discussion.
True.
So you have to figure out key what has been in more and more controversy. Questions will generally range around that only. So finding the right topics is important. So first being the constitution, very like of paramount importance. There are, I think, last there were, I think, three paras directly from constitution. Basically that makes 15
Okay.
questions.
Okay.
And there have been instances. So in last year there was a question from Kaushal Kishore judgment, which dealt with the combined proposition of constitution and torts. So it's better to have a good understanding of the issues involved. Kaushal Kishore was a widely debated judgment like past 2 years back, because it laid down a lot of propositions relating to the freedom of speech and expression and how it exists on a non-state entity. So it was really important. So first is the constitution. Second is Hindu law and Muslim law. You don't have to understand every nuance around it. You don't have to understand divisions, that how will property will devolve or anything. But it's, if you just focus on the concept, it's not very long and it's scoring at the same time. And bare acts are really small. हिंदू लॉ का भी 2-3 bare acts हैं, there are 20 to 26 sections. Muslim law में सिर्फ 2 bare acts हैं, उसमें कुछ like there are named 6 sections. And the propositions are very simple. Almost the same things are repeated at the time. So Hindu law and Muslim law is one, because both, like, I think in last 2 years there were each one paragraph from Muslim law and one paragraph from Hindu law.
Okay. So that
Apart from that,
yeah.
apart from that, I think jurisprudence can be done. Jurisprudence, although people find it difficult, but if you just focus solely on the school and what are the thoughts. For example, I think in last year, in my time, the paper had come 3 questions directly from the paragraph only. There were only 2 questions which we had to apply in the mind and figure out. So juris is limited, so is the international law. International law is also limited. In terms of property law, there is not very wide discussion. There is just a Transfer of Property Act. You have to just find out important provisions. For example, there are 2-3 doctrines in the initial section, like till section 30, subrogation, doctrine of election, etc. And in the end, you just have to figure out what are the essentials of, let's say, gift, or what's the difference between what are the types of mortgages. So basic concepts. If you are clear on concepts with the judgment provided, you can score it very easily. Then probably the last and small act which I would like to lay down is the specific relief act. Very small act, but gives you almost good marks always.
I think ये वो एक्ट है जो बहुत इजीली कवर की जा सकती है. क्वेश्चन तो सबसे पूछा जाएगा, तो why not cover them and then go to the bigger ones. It makes sense. ठीक है. तो उसके अलावा मतलब हम लोग ये भी डिस्कस करना चाहेंगे. So a lot of people prepare for LLM without any sense of direction at times. I mean, ठीक है, उनको LLM करना है, but what after LLM? So I would also like to discuss कि आपने किया था, you were preparing for it, है ना? तो what are certain opportunities that are available to these people who prepare for CLAT PG, and if they're able to do well, let's say they get to top NLUs or even on the basis of their ranks?
Yeah. So first is the advantage of getting the LLM from a recognized NLU is very, like, you get the exposure, which is very important. A lot of people miss out on this exposure in an undergraduate degree. So it's a great plug-in. Okay. You get the same experience, you get the same exposure, and you are almost, this 1 year will set you a lot apart from your peers, let's say, who have not underwent this process. And I think NALSAR and analysts both offers good placements after LLM also. I'm not like very aware about the other colleges, but NALSAR and NALSAR and analysts, I'm sure that they offer very good placement right after LLM also.
That's nice.
Apart from that, there have been, I like in the past, if let's say if you get a rank around 50, 70 is like around under 70, you have a very good chance to land a job at PSU. In the last year, there were 3 calls from 3 PSU. One was Power Grid, one was Damodar Valley Corporation, and recently even the Indian Oil Corporation released a call. Usually these calls are not very uniform in it, but generally if you have this much rank, you have a very good chance of landing a job which is almost equal to, initially also they pay you somewhere around 17-18 lakhs. So 17-18 lakhs out of a government job is a good thing. You start generally from a grade 1 pay. So that's a decent thing. And in terms of exposure also, these PSU gives you a very wide exposure of dealing with a lot of different entities, international law firms. So it's a decent bargain if you sit for it.
This makes sense. I mean, this is very helpful. Actually, I mean, this is one perspective that will help a lot of students to understand कि क्या एग्जाम के आगे भी है, so that they can start working hard on this. है ना? CLAT
Yeah.
PG में मैंने जनरली नोटिस किया है कि वे रोज कॉलेज स्टूडेंट्स कॉलेज की थर्ड ईयर या फिफ्थ ईयर तक आते आते लोग ऐसे हो जाते हैं कि यार देख लेंगे. सो जनरली सबसे लेक्स एक्साइटेड होते हैं. Like they will study whenever they want to study. They don't care too much about. But I think Himanshu's perspective must have given you a lot of incentive to study now, and it's obviously going to make a lot of sense if you do well in the exam. और generally मैंने exam में ये भी देखा है कि it's a very unpredictable kind of an exam. तो there's a possibility that somebody may be a very average student in college, but वो exam में बहुत अच्छा कर जाए, है ना? क्योंकि it's a very different kind of ball game altogether. So
it's a very different ball game, and it does not. There's no surety that if you, let's say, like there are other institutes which say that you have to read entire judgment. First, it's not possible to read entire judgments.
Correct.
It's not possible. Like I have been in law school for 5 years. I don't think I've read more than 25 judgments entirely, because it's not just possible. Yesterday only, the CJ wrote a judgment of 200 pages of a very simple proposition. So it does not make sense to read entire judgment. So it's better that you focus on issues and the important any proposition which is dealing with any new aspect that you have covered, or let's say if there was someone was in dissent, what was that dissent. And frankly, it's not an exam which would take, let's say, more than 2 or 3 months of dedicated preparation. Even if you are able to give, let's say, 3-4 hours each. This is for the students who kind of have already working somewhere, or let's say they are in the final year of the college. So it's better to always give this shot. This will not take a lot of your time, but at the same time, it can be very rewarding.
Definitely. So that's a very important perspective, right? Lastly, बस मैं एक last question पूछूंगा आपसे. I just want a last note कि when you were preparing for the exam, you must have encountered certain problems, because ये जब हम maybe let's say CLAT UG के लिए जो prepare करता है, वो तो एक स्कूल का बच्चा होता है, थोड़ा वो सीरियस होता है, उसको पता है कि मेरे पास वो अपॉर्चुनिटीज है, मेरी वहां जॉब लग जाएगी, काफी एक्सपोजर है इसका. CLAT PG का थोड़ा एक्सपोजर कम है. नाउ वी टोल्ड देम सर्टेन थिंग्स, तो यू मस्ट हैव फेल्ट लिटिल डीमोटिवेटेड कि यार मेरा मन नहीं कर रहा, मैं कुछ और कर रहा हूँ, कुछ और कर लेता हूँ. सो how did you keep going during that period कि यार मैं कर लेता हूँ, मतलब थोड़ा सा समय बचा है, let's do it?
Like even at the time of entering into my exam hall, I was under the impression कि मुझे नहीं पता क्या होगा, like right out of it, but I was just like if you figure out simple things, if you are attaining conceptual clarity at like each topic, तो एक बार आपको ऐसा हो जाता है कि you get some peace of mind कि चलो at least कुछ नहीं तो आपको concept तो पता है. So if you get a good hand of concepts and you get a good hand of judgments, I think there's a very good chance of clearing this exam. This is not very difficult, because having cleared it in 2.5 months, I can say it's not very difficult. It's not something like moving a mountain. It is simple, but you have to be consistent. If you are giving, because these sometimes, let's say if you are studying a judgment, so you will find कि endless है, पता नहीं चल रहा है कौन सा issue important है, कौन सा issue important नहीं है. So if एक ही चीज को आप 2-3 जगह से देख लो, find various sources for the same thing, verify the information, you will find what are the important things which are being discussed. Just focus on those important things. If you go on reading the judgment, that would not help you entirely, and even in a very short time frame. Let's say if you have a 1 year to prepare for LLM, which probably no one does, then you might go for it. But just focus on important aspects and don't leave any subjects. Get a conceptual understanding. You need not become a master of the subject. They will not test you on your memory. You just have to attain the understanding of the subject. That's it. Like that is only what has kept me going throughout.
This makes a lot of sense actually, and this is very practical approach. मतलब ऐसा नहीं है कि सब कुछ याद कर लो, सारी थ्योरी पढ़ लो, पॉसिबल ही नहीं है, है ना? इतना सारा हम कॉलेज के 3 या 5 साल जो भी हमने कोर्स किया उसमें ही नहीं कर पाए थे सारा, तो 2 महीने में तो इट्स एनीवे नॉट पॉसिबल. बट ऑब्वियसली यू विल ऑब्वियसली अंडरस्टैंड कि हम लोग क्या क्या चीजें प्रैक्टिकली कर सकते हैं, क्या हमारे फोकस पॉइंट्स होते हैं. एंड दिस वाज एक्सट्रीमली हेल्पफुल फॉर all the aspirants, and thank you so much, Himanshu, for being a part of this call. And we will definitely like you say be doing this very often if anybody has to discuss as to how to go about the preparation. And thanks a lot again for your time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
Take a second.